The first strike. The quiet hum of everyday life on Earth was shattered in an instant. It was just another normal day. People going to work, children heading to school, and families enjoying their breakfast. Then, without warning, the sky darkened. It wasn't a storm. No, this was something far worse, something humanity could never have prepared for. Across the world, millions of eyes turned to the sky as enormous ships appeared in Earth's atmosphere. They were not the familiar aircraft from human technology. These were alien ships, massive, sleek, and shining with a cold, threatening gleam. The ships came from all directions, each one more imposing than the last. They filled the sky, casting shadows that turned daylight into eerie twilight. Panic spread like wildfire. Sirens blared across cities. People screamed in fear, unsure of what was happening. The government scrambled, trying to make sense of the situation, but no one could understand why Earth was being invaded. A voice crackled through the emergency broadcast systems worldwide, a voice so cold and distant it sent a chill down the spine of every listener. This is the Galactic Council. Earth has violated the laws of the galaxy. Your planet's fate is sealed. Prepare for the consequences. The world froze. It was impossible to comprehend. The Galactic Council. The name itself was something only heard in science fiction stories, not in reality. Who were they? What laws had Earth broken? Why had humanity been singled out? In a small control room, Captain Eva Hernandez stood staring at the screen. She was part of Earth's Special Defense Unit, and her first thought was disbelief. This had to be a mistake. Earth wasn't even on the map for most galactic empires. Yet here they were, and there was no time to waste. "Get me the president," she barked, her voice sharp as steel. Her team scrambled to make the connection. But the signal was dead. All communication channels were jammed. She knew this was no simple misunderstanding. This was a direct attack. The ships in the sky began to move, their movements synchronized, coordinated in a way that no human technology could match. They didn't fire. They just hovered, waiting, as if they knew Earth's leaders would have no choice but to surrender. Eva's mind raced. She was no stranger to battle. In fact, she had fought in countless skirmishes on Earth's borders. But nothing had prepared her for this. A full-scale invasion by an enemy the likes of which humanity had never seen. The Galactic Council wasn't just some foreign power. It was a coalition of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy, and they had just set their sights on Earth. She grabbed a communicator. "Prepare the fleet. We need every ship, every soldier. Now." But even as the words left her mouth, she knew it wouldn't be enough. The odds were impossible. Earth's military forces were powerful, yes, but this was a whole new level of warfare. The first alien assault was swift. Without warning, the ships began to release smaller drones, high-tech, nearly indestructible machines that targeted major cities across the globe. Lasers rained down from the sky, and buildings crumbled like paper. The drones were precise, surgical in their destruction. They targeted military bases, power plants, communication hubs, all the vital systems Earth depended on. The planet was under siege, and humanity had no idea why. In a dark room, far beneath the surface of Earth's capital, the president watched in horror. On the large screen, cities were burning, entire neighborhoods were reduced to rubble. But there was something even more terrifying than the devastation. The aliens had made no demands. They had simply come, and they had attacked. It was as if Earth wasn't even worth negotiating with. Eva's eyes narrowed. "Who are they?" she muttered. She wasn't just a soldier. She was a strategist, a thinker. She needed answers. Why Earth? Why now? As the chaos erupted above, a small group of scientists in a hidden lab uncovered something that could change everything. A signal, faint but unmistakable, had been detected. It wasn't an attack or a weapon. It was a message. From the Galactic Council. The message was cryptic, but the implication was clear. The time has come. Your species must be erased. The words echoed through the room, sending shivers down the spine of every person who read them. The message was a declaration. Earth was not just under attack. It was being hunted. But why? The truth was, Earth had never been a part of the larger galactic community. Humanity had been isolated, hidden away from the greater universe. But something had happened. Something had triggered the Council's wrath. It was as if Earth had unknowingly crossed a line that, once crossed, could never be undone. The message was clear now. Earth had been marked. The Council's wrath was not just about conquest. It was about punishment. "Get me to the front lines," Eva ordered, determination in her voice. She couldn't wait any longer for answers. There was no time for negotiations or diplomacy. She needed to act, to fight back. As Earth's cities burned and the world was thrust into chaos, one question remained: why? The Galactic Council had struck, and the Earth was now in their sights. But what had humanity done to deserve this fate? What dark secret had been uncovered about Earth that led to this brutal attack? Captain Eva Hernandez didn't have the answers, but she was determined to find them and stop the destruction before it was too late. The first strike had been made. The war for humanity's survival had begun. The dust from the first wave of destruction had barely settled when the true horror of the situation began to sink in. The invasion had not been a simple military strike. It was methodical, calculated, and terrifyingly efficient. Cities lay in ruins, but the Galactic Council's ships hovered ominously above, their intent clear. The Earth had been left with only a sliver of hope, its last line of defense. Captain Eva Hernandez, now at the head of Earth's emergency military operations, paced rapidly through the command center. The room buzzed with activity, as soldiers and officers worked tirelessly to patch together what little remained of Earth's communications and military strength. Eva's mind raced, reviewing every bit of information she could gather. She had seen battles, sure, but nothing like this. Alien forces, more advanced than anything humanity had encountered, had dropped from the skies and ravaged Earth's defenses. The enemy was far superior in technology. Their ships could disappear and reappear in the blink of an eye, and their weapons decimated everything they touched. But something was nagging at Eva. Something didn't feel right. Why had they waited? Why hadn't the Council made their move years ago, when Earth was still a fledgling civilization, still divided, still vulnerable? Why now, when Earth had begun to unite and build stronger defenses? She slammed her fist against the table. There had to be a reason. There had to be something humanity had done to provoke this wrath. Suddenly, the room fell silent. A voice broke the stillness, coming from one of the lab technicians. "Captain, we've decoded part of the message from the Galactic Council." Eva shot to her feet, every muscle in her body tense. "What does it say?" The technician looked up, his eyes wide with urgency. "It's a warning. Not just for Earth, but for all humanity. The Galactic Council has been watching us for years. Our technology, it's evolving too fast." Eva's mind raced. She'd known that humanity was advancing at an incredible pace, but she hadn't realized how much it had caught the attention of more powerful civilizations. "What do you mean, too fast?" she asked, her voice low. "Humans are on the brink of discovering something," the technician replied, shaking his head in disbelief. "Something that could threaten the entire galaxy." Eva's heart skipped a beat. Could this be the answer she was looking for? Was it possible that humanity's rapid technological advancements had crossed a line that no one had even known existed? Before she could probe further, the air was pierced by an alarm. A new wave of ships had appeared in Earth's orbit, larger, more powerful than before. The Galactic Council wasn't stopping. They were escalating. "Prepare for battle," Eva ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos. She didn't have time to fully understand what was happening. Earth's forces had no choice but to fight back, to defend their home. As soldiers scrambled, Eva made her way to the war room. The situation was dire. The Council's ships had begun to form a blockade around Earth, cutting off any possible escape routes. They were closing in. Soon, Earth would be trapped. The world's military commanders gathered in the war room, each one a seasoned leader, but even they could not mask the fear in their eyes. The scale of this invasion was beyond anything they had ever prepared for. "We need a strategy, now," one of them said, his voice cracking. "We can't outmatch them in firepower. We need something unexpected." Eva nodded. "We can't fight them head-on. We need to use their overconfidence against them. They think they know everything about us. But they don't." A thought crossed her mind. A daring plan, one that could either win them the war or end everything in an instant. "We'll take their technology and use it against them," she said, the words spilling from her lips before she could stop them. "There's a secret weapon, something hidden in Earth's past." The room went quiet as everyone processed what she was suggesting. "Are you suggesting we use the artifact?" someone asked cautiously. Eva nodded. The alien artifact, the one humanity had recently uncovered, was their only chance. But using it came with immense risks. No one knew the full extent of its power or what it could do. They only knew that it was capable of unimaginable destruction. But Eva had no other choice. This was Earth's last line of defense. The weapon was their best shot at surviving the invasion. "Prepare the team," she said, her tone resolute. "We're going to activate the artifact." As the soldiers scrambled to assemble their forces, the first signs of the battle ahead began to unfold. The Galactic Council's ships were preparing to descend on Earth's major cities once again, with even greater firepower than before. It was a countdown, a race against time. Eva took a deep breath. She was about to make a decision that could change the course of history. If the artifact worked, Earth might have a chance. If not, they were finished. With no time to waste, she made her way to the artifact's location. It was deep within a hidden underground facility, guarded by the best of Earth's forces. As she descended into the heart of the facility, her mind focused on the task ahead. There was no turning back now. As Earth's defenders braced themselves for the battle of a lifetime, the world held its breath. The first strike had been made, and humanity had nowhere to hide. The war for Earth's survival had truly begun. The air in the underground facility was thick with tension. Captain Eva Hernandez stood at the center of the room, surrounded by her most trusted officers and a team of scientists. The artifact, an ancient relic of unknown origin, rested in the middle of a large containment chamber. Its surface glowed faintly, as if it had a life of its own, waiting to be activated. But there was something unsettling about it, something that made Eva's pulse race every time she looked at it. She turned to her chief scientist, Dr. Leonard Hayes, who had been studying the artifact for weeks. His face was pale, his hands trembling as he worked to calibrate the machinery that would trigger its power. "Are you sure about this?" Eva asked, her voice steady but laced with concern. "We don't know what it will do. We don't know if it's even safe." Dr. Hayes didn't meet her eyes, his gaze fixed on the artifact. "We have no choice, Captain. If we don't activate it, we might lose Earth forever. The Council's forces are already overwhelming us. This could be our only chance." Eva nodded grimly. The decision had been made. The artifact would either save them or doom them all. There was no going back. The team moved into position, preparing the activation sequence. As the countdown began, Eva's thoughts raced. What had the Council seen in humanity's potential that had frightened them so much? What was it about Earth that had triggered this invasion? The answers were somewhere in the artifact, buried deep in its unknown power. She just had to pray they were ready to face whatever came next. 10 seconds, Dr. Hayes called out. Eva's breath caught in her throat. The war for Earth's survival had led them to this moment. The artifact was humanity's last hope. But was it a gift or a curse? She had no way of knowing. 5 seconds, Dr. Hayes continued. "Brace yourselves." The room fell silent. The only sound was the rhythmic hum of the machines as they powered up. Then, with a sudden jolt, The artifact's glow intensified. A wave of energy rippled out from it, washing over the room like a tidal wave. Eva stumbled backward, her body shaking from the force of the energy. The lights flickered, and the walls seemed to warp and bend, as if reality itself was being twisted. "Activate the shields," one of the officers shouted. But it was too late. A blinding flash of light erupted from the artifact, filling the room with an otherworldly glow. Eva shielded her eyes, but the light was so intense that it felt like it was burning through her very soul. For a moment, she thought she might lose consciousness, but the sensation passed as quickly as it had come. When the light finally faded, Eva opened her eyes, and what she saw made her blood run cold. The artifact was no longer glowing. Instead, it had transformed into something else, something alive. It was pulsing with an eerie energy, its surface now shifting and changing, like the heartbeat of some ancient forgotten beast. The air around it crackled with power. Eva's heart raced. What just happened? Dr. Hayes stepped forward, his face pale as he examined the artifact. I don't understand. The readings are off the charts. It's reacting, but not like anything we've seen before. The team was silent, each person unsure of what to do next. Was this what the Council had feared? Was this what humanity had unleashed? Before they could process the implications, an alarm blared through the facility. "The Galactic Council's ships are moving into position." An officer shouted. "They're preparing for a full-scale assault." Eva's blood ran cold. This was it. The moment they had been waiting for. The moment they would either win or lose everything. "Get the artifact to the surface," Eva ordered, her voice sharp. "We're going to use its power to strike back." The team sprang into action, carefully moving the artifact to the surface where Earth's remaining forces were gathering. As they ascended through the facility, Eva's mind raced. What would the artifact do when it reached the battlefield? Could it truly turn the tide of the war? Or was it just another weapon that humanity had no control over? As the artifact was placed in position, Earth's last line of defense gathered, ready for the final confrontation. The enemy was closing in fast, their ships descending from the sky, their weapons primed. Eva stood at the front of the line, her heart pounding in her chest. She had led humanity through countless battles. But this felt different. This was more than just a fight for survival. It was a fight for humanity's place in the galaxy. The Council had made a grave mistake by underestimating Earth. And now, it was time to show them the true power of humanity. The battle was about to begin. The battlefield was set. Earth's remaining forces stood at the ready, the very ground beneath their feet vibrating with the force of the incoming Galactic Council fleet. In the distance, the enemy ships loomed, their dark, hulking shapes casting ominous shadows over the planet. The sky was filled with the hum of their weapons, charging and ready to rain down destruction. The stakes had never been higher. Captain Eva Hernandez, standing at the front of the line, watched as the artifact, a mysterious, living relic, pulsed with strange energy beside her. Its surface shimmered, changing colors, its glow deepening with each passing second. She could feel the power radiating from it, but she still couldn't fully comprehend its true nature. Was it a weapon, a shield, or something far more complex? The officers around her were silent, their eyes fixed on the artifact, waiting for it to reveal its secrets. In this critical moment, they had no choice but to trust it. They had no choice but to hope that this ancient power would be enough to stop the might of the Galactic Council. "Captain," one of her officers said, breaking the silence, "the enemy fleet is entering firing range. They're going to strike any moment." Eva took a deep breath, her eyes never leaving the glowing artifact. "Prepare for the worst. Activate the defenses." The ground shook as the first volley of enemy fire erupted from the sky. Missiles streaked through the atmosphere, and the sky was lit with explosions. Earth's forces fought back with all their might, but they were outnumbered, outgunned. The Council's ships were massive and heavily armored, and their weapons were more advanced than anything Earth had ever encountered. But the artifact, It was different. As the enemy fire rained down, the artifact began to hum, its energy building, swirling in the air around it. Eva could feel the tension in the air, the way the very atmosphere seemed to bend and crack. Then, without warning, the artifact unleashed a blinding flash of light, brighter than the sun itself. The force of the blast sent shockwaves rippling through the battlefield, sending enemy ships tumbling through the sky, their shields buckling under the intensity of the energy. The first wave of the Council's fleet was obliterated in an instant, but the artifact didn't stop there. The light continued to spread, washing over the enemy ships, tearing through their hulls like paper, disintegrating them before they even had a chance to retaliate. Eva stood, frozen, watching as the artifact continued to unleash its devastating power. The sight was beyond anything she had ever seen, more powerful than any weapon humanity had ever created. The air hummed with the raw energy, a low, almost musical vibration that shook her very bones. The Council had underestimated Earth. They had thought they could simply crush humanity underfoot, that Earth's forces were too small, too weak to be a real threat. But now, they were witnessing something far more terrifying. They were seeing the true potential of a species they had long ignored, a species that had been underestimated, written off as insignificant. Until now. Eva's mind raced as she processed what was happening. The artifact was more than just a weapon. It was a key to unlocking humanity's greatest potential. And it was only now, in the midst of this war, that they were beginning to understand its full power. The Council's fleet was crumbling under the intensity of the attack, their ships falling from the sky, unable to withstand the onslaught. But as the enemy ships began to retreat, a new figure appeared in the distance, an even larger vessel, a massive warship that dwarfed anything the Council had sent before. It was heading straight for Earth, and it was clearly the command ship, the leader of the fleet. Eva's heart sank. They had taken out the first wave, but this new ship, it was something else entirely. It was an abomination of metal and energy, far more advanced than anything they had ever encountered. This was their final gamble. If they couldn't stop this ship, the battle would be lost. "Captain," one of the officers said, his voice filled with urgency, "that ship is equipped with a weapon capable of destroying the entire planet. We won't survive another attack." Eva clenched her fists. The odds had never seemed worse, and yet, they had the artifact. They had the power to fight back. But what price would they have to pay to use it? The artifact was already responding, its glow pulsing with energy, as if it knew the final showdown was approaching. Eva knew they didn't have much time. The fate of humanity rested on her shoulders, and she couldn't afford to fail now. "We have one shot at this," Eva said, her voice firm. "Prepare the artifact for the final strike. We'll end this once and for all." The officers moved quickly, setting the artifact in position. The energy around it intensified, the air growing thick with power. The ship above them loomed ever closer, its massive cannons now locked and ready to fire. Eva took one final look at the battlefield. Her heart was racing, but there was no turning back now. It was time for humanity to show the galaxy what it was truly capable of. As the enemy ship fired its first shot, Eva activated the artifact, unleashing its full force. A wave of energy shot from the artifact, colliding with the enemy ship in a blinding explosion. The ship shuddered, its shields collapsing under the intensity of the blast. The weapon that had been designed to destroy Earth was now turned against its creator. The massive ship faltered, its systems failing, as the artifact's power surged through it. The Council's ship erupted in a spectacular explosion, the shockwave reaching Earth's surface, shaking the very ground beneath them. It was over. The Galactic Council had underestimated humanity, and now they would regret it. The battle for Earth was won. The battlefield was silent now. The once terrifying fleet of the Galactic Council had been shattered, leaving nothing but remnants of destroyed ships and the echoes of the catastrophic battle. Earth stood victorious, but at a cost. Captain Eva Hernandez stood at the edge of the battlefield, looking out over the wreckage of what had once been a mighty force. The glow of the artifact still lingered in the air, its energy fading, but the devastation it had caused was undeniable. The ground beneath her feet was scorched, the atmosphere thick with smoke and debris. Her mind was spinning. Earth had won, but at what price? The artifact had given them a power they had never imagined, but it was clear that this victory was just the beginning. The Council wouldn't sit idly by. They would come back, and next time, they would be prepared. She turned toward her crew, the survivors who stood behind her, their faces covered in ash and exhaustion. Some were injured, others lost in thought, processing the shock of what they had just witnessed. Eva knew that even though the battle was over, the war was far from finished. "Captain," one of her officers spoke, his voice low and uncertain. "What happens now? The Council will send reinforcements. We're not safe yet." Eva didn't respond immediately. She had been thinking about this for hours. Earth had never faced anything like the Council. The power of the artifact was incredible, but it was clear that they could not rely on it forever. The Council's forces were vast, and their technology was beyond anything Earth had ever encountered. "We prepare," Eva said at last, her voice resolute. "We rebuild, and we get ready for what's coming." But deep down, Eva knew that there was more to this war than just defeating the Council. There was something far darker at play, something they didn't fully understand. The artifact had been a powerful weapon, but its origins were still a mystery. Who had created it, and why had it been hidden away on Earth for so long? As the crew worked to assess the damage, Eva gathered her top officers for a private meeting. She needed answers, and she needed them fast. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and if they were going to survive, they needed to understand what they were up against. "Get me everything we know about the artifact," she ordered, her eyes sharp. "I want to know who made it, and why they chose Earth. And most importantly, I want to know how we can use it to our advantage." The officers nodded, but Eva could tell that they, too, were worried. The artifact was powerful, but it was also unpredictable. They didn't know how long it would last, or how much control they had over it, and the enemy would undoubtedly come for it, seeking to reclaim the power that had just been used against them. Back in the command center, the mood was somber as the survivors of the battle assessed their situation. Earth's forces had suffered heavy losses, and the enemy's forces had left deep scars on the planet's surface. But Earth had proven something that day. A message had been sent across the galaxy. Humanity was not to be underestimated. Eva looked out over the horizon, where the sun was beginning to rise, casting a pale light over the wasteland of the battlefield. The battle was won, but there was no time to rest. The Galactic Council was not done with Earth, not by a long shot. But Earth had something they didn't expect: unity, resolve, and a fierce determination to protect their home. Humanity had fought back against an overwhelming enemy, and they had done it together. And Eva knew that this was just the beginning of a much larger fight. "This is only the start," she murmured to herself. "The Council will come again, but we will be ready, and we will fight for our home." In the distance, the sound of ships could be heard. The first wave of reinforcements had arrived. They were Earth's allies, but there was a new sense of urgency in their voices. The war had just begun, and Earth would need every single one of them. As the days passed and Earth's military forces regrouped, Eva's thoughts turned to the artifact once again. She had to understand it, unlock its secrets, and use it to their advantage. She had no choice, because the Council would return, and next time, Earth would be prepared. The galaxy had been watching, and now Earth had made its mark. Humanity was no longer the underdog. It was a force to be reckoned with, but the price of victory would be high. The Council would not forget the loss they had suffered, and the battles ahead would be even more brutal. But as Eva stood there, looking out over the battlefield, she knew one thing for certain: Earth would never back down. No matter what came next, Humanity would stand tall, ready to defend their home, ready to fight for the future. The ultimate battle had begun, and Earth was ready to fight. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, but the shadow of the Galactic Council still loomed over Earth. The victory they had secured on the battlefield had come at a steep price, and with every passing day, the uneasy calm grew heavier. The Council, although wounded, had not forgotten the defeat. They were regrouping, building their forces, and plotting their next move. Eva stood at the command center, staring at the display screen as it flickered with images of alien fleets gathering just outside Earth's borders. The Galactic Council was sending a massive armada, larger, more advanced, and better prepared than ever before. It was no longer just about the artifact. The Council had a new mission: to obliterate Earth, once and for all. "We don't have much time," Eva muttered, pacing back and forth. Her officers watched her with a mixture of concern and resolve. The pressure was mounting, and they knew that their next move would determine the fate of humanity. "They're coming for us." "What can we do, Captain?" Lieutenant Harris asked. He was a young officer, but his experience in the last battle had shown he had the heart of a warrior. "We can't fight them off with the forces we have now." Eva paused. The truth was undeniable. Earth had fought hard and won a major battle, but they were still vastly outnumbered. The Council's ships were technologically superior. Even with the mysterious powers of the artifact, Earth's forces were not ready for the full wrath of the Council. She turned to her crew, her eyes steely with determination. "We prepare for the worst, but we won't give up. Not now. Not ever." "Agreed," Harris replied. "But there's something else, something I've been thinking about ever since the battle. The artifact. It's more than just a weapon. There's something we're missing, something hidden in its design. I think it's meant to do more than we've realized." Eva's mind raced. Could it be that the artifact had powers they had yet to unlock? Could it hold the key to turning the tide of the war? She didn't know the answers, but the urgency was clear. They had to find out. "We need to study it," Eva said. "Get me the best minds we have on it. We'll figure out what we're dealing with and how to use it to our advantage." As the team scrambled to gather intelligence and explore the artifact's secrets, Earth's military forces continued to prepare. They were building new weapons, fortifying their defenses, and preparing for a fight that seemed almost impossible to win. But Eva knew that humanity had something the Council would never understand: an unbreakable will to survive and a fierce determination to protect their home. Days later, Earth received an unexpected visitor, a mysterious alien ship, one that had not been seen before in the galaxy. It was sleek, almost organic in design, and its presence sent a shiver down Eva's spine. Who could it be? An ally, or something far more dangerous? The ship docked at Earth's military headquarters, and Eva watched as a figure disembarked. It was not an alien she recognized. Tall and imposing, the stranger wore a cloak that shimmered in the light, and their face was obscured by a mask that seemed to change shape with every passing second. "Who are you?" Eva demanded, stepping forward. Her hand instinctively went to the hilt of her weapon. The figure spoke in a language that Eva didn't understand, but their words seemed to resonate deep within her mind. A translator device quickly kicked in, allowing the message to be understood. "I am Korath," the figure said. "I come from a distant system. I have heard of your struggle, and I offer you my assistance." Eva raised an eyebrow. "You're not with the Council, then?" Korath's mask flickered with what seemed like a smile. "No, I have my reasons for opposing them. And I believe that you, Earth, have a power unlike any other. The Council's arrogance has clouded their judgment. They underestimate you." Eva was skeptical but intrigued. "Why would you help us?" Korath's voice lowered, becoming more serious. "Because the Council's true purpose is not just to conquer. They are seeking to control the galaxy's very core. The artifact you possess is key to stopping them, but you must understand its full potential. The war you fight is not just for your survival. It's for the survival of everything. The artifact can either save or destroy the galaxy. You must make sure it falls into the right hands. Eva's heart pounded in her chest. She had always known that the artifact was powerful, but this revelation took it to a new level. If the Council were after the artifact for more than just as weaponry, if they wanted to control the galaxy's core, then Earth was in greater danger than ever. "You're saying the artifact can destroy the galaxy?" Eva asked, her voice trembling. "Yes," Korath replied, "but only if it falls into the wrong hands. If used incorrectly, it could bring the galaxy to its knees. The Council cannot be allowed to control it." Eva nodded. "We have to keep it safe. We have to make sure they don't get their hands on it." Korath's eyes glowed under the mask, and for a moment, Eva felt as though she was looking into a deep, ancient wisdom. "You're not alone in this fight. There are others out there who will help you. But time is running out. The Council's invasion force is already on its way." Eva's mind raced. Allies were gathering. The artifact was more powerful than they had imagined. And the Council's invasion was imminent. The stakes had never been higher. As Korath's ship departed, Eva turned to her team, her resolve hardening. "Get ready. The Council is coming. But we won't be caught off guard. We'll fight back. And this time, we'll win." The war was far from over. The battle for the galaxy had only just begun, and Earth would be at the center of it all. The days leading up to the battle were filled with intense preparation. Eva and her team worked tirelessly, each knowing that the fate of the galaxy rested in their hands. The discovery of the artifact's full potential had given them a glimmer of hope, but the task ahead was monumental. The Galactic Council's armada was vast and powerful, and the forces on Earth were still small in comparison. But Earth had something the Council never expected: unity. People from all corners of the planet, from every nation and every culture, had set aside their differences. They fought as one. For their homes, for their families, and for their future. The Council had underestimated humanity's will to survive, and now they would pay the price. Eva stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching the final fleet preparations unfold. The once quiet space around Earth was now alive with activity, as hundreds of ships gathered to defend their world. She felt the weight of the moment. This was no longer just a battle for survival. It was a fight for the very future of the galaxy. The mysterious alien Korath had returned, bringing with him strange allies and powerful weapons. They had trained Earth's forces, teaching them how to use the artifact's full potential. But even with these advantages, Eva knew that the battle ahead would be a fight like no other. "Are you ready, Captain?" Lieutenant Harris asked, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. Eva nodded, her eyes never leaving the view of space. "We don't have a choice. We fight because we must. We fight because it's the only way forward." The ships of Earth's fleet had aligned in formation, a shining symbol of hope against the darkness of the Council's tyranny. The first wave of the Council's forces was already approaching, massive ships forming a blockade in the vast expanse of space. Their weapons were powerful, their numbers overwhelming. But Earth's people had something the Council could never replicate: human ingenuity and courage. As the first salvo of enemy fire streaked across the void, Eva ordered her fleet to engage. The battle began in earnest. The sky was filled with explosions, as Earth's ships fought with everything they had. The Council's forces were relentless, their superior technology on full display as they unleashed wave after wave of destruction. Yet despite the odds, Earth's fleet held strong. The human spirit, fueled by determination, hope, and the power of the artifact, shone through. Eva was in the heart of the action, coordinating the defense from the flagship. Her hands flew across the controls, directing ships to critical points and issuing commands to avoid the barrage of fire from the enemy. "Captain, they're breaking through the outer defenses," one of her officers called out. Eva's heart raced. This was the moment of truth. The artifact was their final hope, the key to turning the tide of the war. With a quick motion, she activated the artifact's power. channeling its energy into the fleet's weapons systems. The artifact hummed with an ancient energy, its glow filling the bridge. The very air seemed to crackle with power as the artifact's abilities were unleashed on the battlefield. Earth's ships fired back with a force the Council had never anticipated. The sheer magnitude of the weapon's energy tore through the enemy lines, sending shockwaves through space. Direct hit on the enemy flagship, Harris shouted. The enemy ship exploded in a blinding flash of light. But the victory came at a cost. The Council's forces retaliated with their full strength. A massive beam of concentrated energy hurtled toward Earth's flagship, cutting through space like a blade. Eva gritted her teeth, braced for impact. She shouted, but it was too late. The beam struck the flagship, sending the ship into a violent spin. Alarms blared as the hull was breached, and the crew scrambled to contain the damage. In the chaos, Eva remained calm, directing her officers with precision. This ship isn't done yet. We've come too far to stop now. With the last of their energy reserves, Earth's fleet pushed forward. They fought with everything they had, their attacks relentless, their tactics unpredictable. The Council's ships were beginning to falter. They were outmatched, outwitted, and overwhelmed by humanity's determination. The battle raged on, but slowly the tide began to turn in Earth's favor. The Council's forces, once so confident, were now on the defensive. Earth had proven that it was not to be underestimated. As the final Council ship fell, Earth's fleet let out a collective cheer. The battle was over. The war was won. Against all odds, humanity had triumphed. Eva stood at the helm of the flagship, gazing out into the vast emptiness of space. Her heart swelled with pride for her crew, for her people, and for the future they had just secured. The Council, once the ultimate power in the galaxy, had been defeated, and Earth, against all odds, had emerged victorious. "Is it over?" Harris asked, his voice filled with disbelief. Eva smiled, her eyes scanning the battlefield. "Yes, for now, it's over. But this is just the beginning. The galaxy has learned not to underestimate humanity, and I have a feeling the story of Earth's victory will echo across the stars for generations to come." As the Earth's fleet returned to its home, Eva knew that the victory was not just a military one. It was a victory of the human spirit. The galaxy would never forget the day humanity stood against the odds and won. And as for the Galactic Council, they would never make the mistake of underestimating Earth again. The war was over, but the legend of humanity's strength had only just begun. The quiet before the storm. It was an ordinary day on Earth, or at least that's what people thought. The sky was clear, the sun was shining, and the world was going about its daily routine. But something was off, something that couldn't be explained, and it started with a strange sound. It came from the sky, a low hum, barely noticeable at first. People brushed it off as a passing anomaly, maybe a distant airplane or some other earthly noise. But it didn't stop. The sound grew louder, more persistent, until it seemed to come from everywhere. People began to notice it, looking up from their daily tasks, wondering if anyone else heard it too. In a remote military outpost, technicians sat at their stations, listening intently to the strange hum. The sound didn't match any frequency they were familiar with. It wasn't a plane, a satellite, or anything they had ever detected. For hours they listened, trying to decode its origin, but the hum remained just out of reach. By nightfall, the hum had turned into a low vibration. People could feel it in their bones. Earth had never experienced anything like this before. It was as if the very planet itself was trembling, though no earthquake had occurred. Still, the world tried to go on as usual, but unease spread like wildfire. News outlets reported on the phenomenon, but no one had any answers. No one knew where the sound was coming from. Meanwhile, in the highest offices of the United Nations, world leaders gathered to discuss the situation. The hum could be heard faintly even inside the conference room. There was an odd sense of tension in the air, something none of them could explain. The intelligence agencies were alerted, and every satellite orbiting the planet was tasked with scanning for any unusual signals. But still, nothing made sense. Hours turned into days, and the hum persisted. No one knew what was causing it. And worse yet, no one knew why it had started. Across the globe, scientists and military experts were baffled, trying to find a logical explanation. But the truth was, they were beginning to fear there might not be one. Then, on the third day, everything changed. A signal was intercepted. A clear transmission that was unlike anything Earth had ever received. It wasn't from any known satellite, nor was it from any human-made source. The message was brief, only 3 words: prepare for impact. The message sent shockwaves through the global community. How could this be possible? Who was sending this message? Was Earth under attack? Panic quickly set in. Governments issued emergency alerts, and people around the world rushed to secure their homes. Military forces were put on high alert, and the UN quickly convened an emergency session. The message was analyzed, and it was confirmed that it came from outside the solar system. The implications were too enormous to grasp. Who would send a message like this? Why Earth? What did it mean? In the midst of the chaos, there were whispers. Some people said it was a warning from an alien race. Others believed it was some kind of advanced technology malfunction. But the question on everyone's mind was simple: what was coming, and how could they stop it? The governments of the world had no answers. They had prepared for many things: natural disasters, nuclear threats, even possible asteroid impacts. But an alien invasion? No one had considered that. And yet, here they were, staring into the unknown. The military began scrambling to put together a defense plan. But the truth was, they didn't know what they were up against. They didn't know if Earth was facing an invasion, a natural disaster, or something else entirely. The unknown was the most terrifying part. There had been no warning, no signs that anything like this was coming. It felt like a nightmare, one that they couldn't wake up from. As the world prepared for the worst, one thing became painfully clear: Earth was no longer alone in the universe. The hum had not been a coincidence. It had been a signal from someone, or something, out there, watching. And now, whatever was coming was closer than anyone dared to imagine. For the first time in history, the people of Earth stood united in their fear of the unknown. The calm before the storm was over, and the storm was coming. As the days passed, the vibration in the air grew stronger. People couldn't help but feel a sense of impending doom, as if something catastrophic was just beyond the horizon. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the sound stopped. The silence that followed was deafening. But it wasn't the end. No, it was only the beginning. A strange energy filled the air, and the sky seemed to darken. The calm before the storm had been a fleeting moment, a moment that would never be forgotten. As Earth waited, breath held in anticipation, one thing was certain: the world was about to change forever, and nothing would ever be the same again. The days following the mysterious message were tense. Earth's government scrambled to gather information, but there was little to be found. Scientists and military experts alike were at a loss. It wasn't until the third day after the transmission that the world would finally get its first answer, and it would be a terrifying one. The silence that followed the cryptic warning had been short-lived. Late in the evening, an enormous tremor shook the entire planet. Buildings swayed, windows rattled, and the earth beneath their feet seemed to groan as if something vast and powerful was shifting below. The hum had returned, louder than before. But this time, it wasn't just a sound, it was felt. Across the globe, people rushed into the streets. Fear had overtaken them. Whatever this was, it was real. It wasn't a mistake, and it wasn't a hoax. The vibrations seemed to grow stronger, pulsing like the beating of some monstrous heart. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, the vibrations stopped. The world held its breath. What would come next? It didn't take long for the answer to come. At the very same moment the tremors had ceased, the skies above Earth were ripped open, not by an explosion, but by something far more terrifying. A fleet of ships. They appeared in the atmosphere, descending from above at incredible speed. Massive warships, their dark silhouettes almost swallowing the light of the stars. The ships hovered over major cities around the world, blocking out the sun as they descended. The ships were unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Sleek and angular, their dark metal surfaces shimmered under the harsh light of the sun. They seemed to pulse with an eerie energy, an energy that hummed in the air. No one knew what to do. The military scrambled to respond, but there was little they could do against an enemy that they couldn't even understand. As the ships descended further, the world held its breath. What was the purpose of these visitors? Was this an invasion? A warning? No one could say for sure. Then, as the ships hovered over the ground, a message was broadcasted worldwide. The voice was deep, mechanical, and chilling, as though it came from something not quite human. The words were simple but heavy with meaning. Earth has been marked. At that moment, panic erupted across the globe. What did it mean? Marked for what? Destruction. Subjugation. The message left more questions than answers. But one thing was clear. Earth was under threat, and the rest of the galaxy was watching. The response was swift but futile. Earth's military forces launched everything they had: fighter jets, missiles, and anti-aircraft weapons. But it was as though the enemy ships didn't even notice. They simply absorbed the attacks, their hulls glowing as the missiles exploded harmlessly against them. The ships didn't retaliate. They just watched. And then, the first strike came. Without warning, a beam of bright energy shot down from the lead ship. It struck the ground in the middle of a major city, one of the largest in the world. The explosion was unlike anything Earth had ever seen. The blast vaporized everything within a 10-mile radius. Buildings were reduced to rubble in an instant, and thousands of lives were lost in mere seconds. The air was thick with dust and smoke, and a haunting silence followed, broken only by the distant sounds of alarm and chaos. The destruction was mind-boggling. A few minutes ago, the world had been full of life and activity. Now, it was a scene from a nightmare. The sheer scale of the devastation sent a shiver down the spine of everyone who saw it. World leaders quickly convened an emergency meeting. They had never seen anything like this before. They tried to coordinate a response, but they had no idea who or what they were dealing with. Earth had never been prepared for an extraterrestrial threat of this magnitude. The military's weapons were useless, and it became clear that humanity's greatest strength, its technology, was no match for these invaders. The question on everyone's mind was simple. Why? Why Earth? Had humanity unknowingly offended someone, or had they been marked for destruction from the very beginning? In the midst of the chaos, the Galactic Council, which had watched the events unfold from afar, was beginning to take notice. The message had been clear. Earth was no longer just a small planet on the edge of the galaxy. It had attracted the attention of something far older, far more dangerous, and far more powerful than anything the world had ever known. The first strike was just the beginning. The enemy wasn't interested in negotiations. They weren't interested in peace. The war had begun, and humanity was standing on the edge of extinction. As the world came to terms with the terrifying new reality, there was one thing that kept echoing through the minds of every survivor. If humanity was going to survive, they would have to fight with everything they had. The world was in chaos. The air was thick with fear, and every city on Earth now looked over its shoulder, waiting for the next strike. The destruction from the first attack had been catastrophic, and it was clear that the enemy wasn't just here for a warning. They had come to annihilate. In the wake of the attack, Earth's leaders met with urgency and desperation. The United Nations, now the last hope for global unity, called an emergency summit to organize a response. Military forces were mobilized, and every available resource was thrown into preparation. The most advanced weapons humanity could muster, nuclear warheads, experimental energy shields, and cybernetic troops, were all placed under one banner: survival. But as they strategized, a cold, hard truth began to settle in. Humanity's weapons, though impressive, paled in comparison to the invaders' might. They had no answers. They couldn't even touch the enemy's ships, which hovered above the ground with ease, immune to any technology Earth had at its disposal. The attack had been so overwhelming, so precise, that all they could do was wait for the next blow to fall. Across the globe, people gathered in shelters, hiding from the unknown. They held on to their loved ones, hoping against hope that they would survive. Governments began to issue evacuation orders, moving civilians to underground bunkers, but there was no way to ensure safety. The world felt hopeless, like a planet on the verge of extinction. Yet, amid this terror, there was something stirring, an idea that, against all odds, could turn the tide. Humanity's strength had always been its ingenuity, its ability to adapt and overcome impossible odds. Even as the world seemed to crumble, brilliant minds around the globe began working together in secret. Scientists, engineers, and military leaders pooled their knowledge. They knew they had no time to waste. The idea that emerged was bold, audacious, and perhaps the last hope for mankind: the Earth Defense Coalition. This was no simple military strategy. The Earth Defense Coalition was a full-scale effort to build a unified global force that could rival the invaders' technology. It wasn't just about missiles or warships. It was about creating a weapon they couldn't predict. The coalition began to repurpose everything from space stations to old military satellites to create an unprecedented defense network in Earth's atmosphere. It was a monumental effort, requiring the cooperation of every nation, every scientist, every soldier. But even as humanity began its desperate race to prepare for the next attack, there was another problem. The enemy didn't seem to be in any hurry. The ships hovered ominously, waiting, watching, and offering no clue as to what their next move would be. Then, without warning, the message came again. The same mechanical voice echoed through the global communication systems. It was chilling, like the voice of death itself. Humanity, your time is running out. You have no defenses. You cannot escape your fate. The message sent waves of dread through the population. It was as if the invaders were toying with humanity, letting them scramble, letting them build their defenses, knowing full well they were wasting their time. But Earth wasn't giving up. Humanity's resolve was tested like never before. People didn't just wait for the inevitable. They fought back. Leaders emerged, both on the battlefield and behind the scenes, pushing humanity's resolve to its limits. It wasn't just about saving themselves anymore. It was about proving that Earth wouldn't go down without a fight. The first test of this new resistance came within weeks. A large alien ship, the flagship of the invading fleet, descended into Earth's atmosphere once again. The Earth Defense Coalition had finished its first phase, a vast experimental weapon built to launch a direct attack on the invaders' technology. The weapon was a prototype, still untested and fragile, but it was humanity's first true weapon capable of causing real damage. It was a massive energy cannon, positioned on a space station high above Earth, capable of firing concentrated plasma beams. The weapon had been created using Earth's most advanced technology and the knowledge gained from studying the wreckage of the first attack. As the enemy ship descended, the world held its breath. It was a moment of truth. The cannon fired, and for the first time, it struck true. The beam hit the alien ship, and a massive explosion erupted. The ship shook violently, and its sleek exterior cracked and burned under the intensity of the blast. But the enemy didn't retreat. Instead, the ship released a powerful shockwave that sent the cannon's energy network into overload. The cannon exploded in a burst of bright light, and the defensive network collapsed. The aliens had countered the attack with ease, and Earth had lost its first real weapon. The loss was devastating. The feeling of victory was short-lived. But in the midst of this crushing defeat, something unexpected happened. Humanity did not give up. Instead, it only made them more determined. The war had only just begun, but Earth had learned something crucial. The invaders were not invincible. They could bleed. They could be hurt. And now, the battle was personal. Humanity had lost its first major weapon, but it had gained something far more valuable: a fire that could not be extinguished. The fight for Earth was far from over. The loss of the weapon shook humanity to its core. But in that moment of despair, something remarkable began to stir within the hearts of those fighting for Earth. They had come to understand a terrifying truth: the invaders could be hurt. They were not as invincible as they seemed. This realization sparked a new wave of defiance that rippled across the globe. The Earth Defense Coalition, though crippled by the failure of its weapon, began to regroup. The loss had taught them a valuable lesson. Brute force alone would not defeat the enemy. They needed a new strategy, one that could outsmart the invaders. As scientists worked tirelessly in underground labs and military strategists gathered in secret war rooms, the focus shifted from direct confrontation to disruption. The coalition realized they had one advantage that the invaders could not match: human ingenuity. A team of brilliant minds, led by Dr. Clara Haywood, one of Earth's foremost experts in artificial intelligence, began working on a new plan. They would create a weapon not of firepower, but of information. Using the very technology the invaders relied on, they would infiltrate their systems, disrupting their command networks from the inside. It was risky, but it was their only option. The plan was simple in theory, but extremely difficult in execution. The invaders' ships operated using a highly advanced neural network, a system that allowed them to control everything from communication to weapon systems. If they could hack into this network, they could turn the tide of the war. But the challenge was immense. Earth had never faced such a sophisticated system before. The enemy had total control over their ships, and trying to breach their defenses would be like trying to break through an unbreakable wall. Dr. Haywood and her team developed a plan to send a small group of elite soldiers aboard a captured alien ship. Their mission: infiltrate the enemy's main command ship and upload a virus into its neural network. It was a suicide mission. No one knew what would happen once they tried to hack into the invaders' systems. The risk was unimaginable, but it was their only hope. While the soldiers prepared for the most dangerous mission Earth had ever seen, a sense of anticipation hung over the planet. Humanity's will to fight had been awakened. The people of Earth, once terrified and hopeless, began to rally behind the Earth Defense Coalition. Nations that had once been divided were now united, all fighting for the survival of the human race. They knew they were up against a force beyond their comprehension, but they also knew one thing: they would not go down without a fight. The soldiers trained relentlessly, using alien technology to adapt and develop new tactics. They studied the enemy's weaknesses and discovered one startling fact: the invaders, while powerful, had never encountered anything quite like Earth's soldiers. The invaders' military, though technologically superior, lacked the unpredictable nature and resilience of humanity. Earth's soldiers fought not just with strength, but with heart. As the mission day drew closer, there was a sense of quiet determination among the soldiers. They knew they were walking into the unknown, into the heart of the enemy's stronghold, where they would face death with no guarantee of success. But there was something else that drove them, something that had become clear in the wake of the first battles. The invaders were not unstoppable. They could be beaten. The soldiers were sent off in silence, their ships entering the vastness of space, heading toward the heart of the enemy's territory. The Earth Defense Coalition held its breath as the soldiers neared the alien flagship. The mission, though a long shot, was humanity's best hope. Back on Earth, the rest of the population could only wait. They had given everything they had to the cause. The Earth Defense Coalition's forces were ready for the final confrontation, but their fate now rested on the shoulders of a handful of brave souls. As the soldiers aboard the alien ship prepared to launch their final assault, the enemy had no idea what was coming. The invaders had believed they were untouchable, that their control over the galaxy was absolute. But they had underestimated the one thing they could never predict: human resolve. In the depths of space, aboard the enemy's command ship, the soldiers began their daring operation. They infiltrated the alien vessel with stealth and precision, making their way to the heart of the command center. The tension was unbearable as they approached their target, the core of the invaders' neural network. They planted the virus and activated it, knowing that the slightest mistake could cost them everything. The virus spread quickly, infiltrating the invaders' systems faster than they could react. Panic spread among the alien forces as their ships, once invincible, began to glitch and falter. Communications were severed, weapon systems malfunctioned, and the invaders' once impenetrable fleet became vulnerable. The tables had turned. With the invaders' systems in chaos, Earth's forces launched their counteroffensive. Ships that had once been helpless against the alien onslaught now fought with renewed strength, taking advantage of the sudden confusion. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, humanity had a real chance. The Earth Defense Coalition's forces, inspired by the success of the infiltration mission, launched a full-scale attack on the invaders' ships. The war was no longer one-sided. The invaders, once so sure of their victory, now found themselves in a fight for their survival. Humanity's greatest weapon had never been their advanced technology or their strength. It was their unyielding spirit. Against all odds, Earth had struck back. And this time, the invaders would have to reckon with the resilience of the human race. The battle raged across the stars as Earth's forces took full advantage of the sudden chaos in the invaders' fleet. The tide had truly turned, and humanity was proving the impossible. They could stand toe-to-toe with the most powerful empire the galaxy had ever known. But while the soldiers and generals on the battlefield felt a rush of adrenaline, the reality of war remained heavy on their shoulders. In the vastness of space, the Earth Defense Coalition's fleet had grown stronger. The viral attack on the invaders' neural network had turned their sophisticated war machines into vulnerable targets. The alien ships, once invincible, now floated aimlessly, their weapons and shields useless. However, the enemy had not given up. They had become desperate, realizing that their once certain victory was slipping away. As the invaders scrambled to regain control of their forces, humanity seized the opportunity to press forward. However, victory was not assured. The invaders, though struggling, were not without their resources. In secret command centers, high-ranking officers from the Galactic Empire plotted their next move. They had underestimated Earth, but they would not make the same mistake again. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the scientists, engineers, and strategists who had worked tirelessly to develop the virus and infiltrate the enemy's systems were hailed as heroes. Dr. Clara Haywood, the brilliant mind behind the hacking operation, found herself in a new position of leadership. Yet even as she received accolades, the truth of the situation weighed heavily on her. The invasion was far from over. It was only just beginning. "We've made a dent," Dr. Haywood said to her team as they monitored the progress of the offensive. "But they'll adapt. They always do. We need to stay ahead of them, or our victory will be short-lived." Her words rang true. The invaders were already making adjustments. A new fleet of warships was being constructed, and they had started employing more aggressive tactics. Earth's forces, though emboldened, would need to remain vigilant. Every victory came at a cost, and the loss of so many soldiers weighed heavily on the minds of those left behind. The battlefronts stretched across vast distances, from the icy moons of distant planets to the fiery depths of asteroid fields. Human ships engaged the alien fleet in all-out war. As human ingenuity and determination outmatched the invaders' advanced technology, the universe began to take notice. The Galactic Council, once so certain of Earth's failure, began to question the reality of the invasion. Could the unthinkable happen? Could Earth actually win this war? On Earth, however, things were far from calm. In cities that were once caught in the chaos of bombardment, life was slowly beginning to return to normal. Humans, ever resourceful, had begun to rebuild. The soldiers who had returned from the front lines became symbols of hope for the people. Their bravery had shown the galaxy that humanity was more than just a species to be conquered. They were a force to be reckoned with. Yet, the war was far from won. The invading empire still had the upper hand in terms of sheer numbers and technology. Humanity's greatest asset remained its resolve and ability to adapt. But with each passing day, as Earth's forces pushed forward, the invaders found themselves on the back foot. The invaders' leadership scrambled to find a way to reclaim their dominance. They knew their fleet was weakening, but their pride and arrogance made it hard for them to accept defeat. The Empire's most powerful commanders began to make drastic decisions, some of which would shape the course of the war in ways no one could predict. As Earth's forces continued to press forward, a new weapon was revealed. The invaders had unveiled their final trump card, a massive planet-killing ship capable of destroying entire worlds in an instant. It was their last hope to crush Earth's resistance, but it came with a heavy cost. If they used it, the galaxy would know that their empire was not just a force of war, but of destruction. The Earth Defense Coalition was now faced with an impossible choice: fight back against this new weapon and risk the total destruction of everything, or find a way to defeat it before it could be used. It was clear that Earth's fight for survival had entered its most dangerous phase yet. Dr. Haywood and her team went back to the drawing board. They had developed new strategies, but the alien weapon was unlike anything they had faced before. It was a race against time to figure out how to counter it. Meanwhile, military leaders around the world were preparing their forces for the biggest battle of their lives. Earth's resistance was no longer just about fighting for survival. It was about stopping an enemy that would stop at nothing to erase humanity from the galaxy. In the face of overwhelming odds, humanity's courage was put to the test like never before. But the people of Earth had learned one very important lesson: never underestimate them. Their greatest strength was not their technology, nor their tactics. It was their will to fight, no matter the cost. And so, as the final showdown loomed closer, humanity prepared for its greatest test yet. The fate of Earth, and perhaps the galaxy itself, hung in the balance. Would Earth's forces rise to meet the invaders' final weapon, or would the galaxy bear witness to the extinction of humanity? The answer would be decided on the battlefield, and the stakes had never been higher. The skies above Earth were darkened by the threat of a shadow that loomed larger with every passing day. The invaders' massive planet killer ship, a monstrous weapon capable of wiping out entire civilizations with a single blast, was now on its way toward Earth. It was their ultimate weapon, the last thing they had to use to finish what they had started. If this weapon fired, it would mean the end of humanity. On Earth, the entire world braced itself. News of the weapon's arrival had sent ripples of panic through the population, but it also ignited an unstoppable determination. Soldiers, civilians, and governments alike united under one common goal: stop the invaders from unleashing this catastrophic force. The military forces of Earth gathered in the final preparations, ready to make their stand against the enemy. They knew this might be their last chance. The world had already fought too long and too hard to give up now. There was no other option but to give everything they had in this last battle. Dr. Clara Haywood, the brilliant strategist who had helped tip the scales of war with her hacking skills, had a heavy burden on her shoulders. The planet killer was unlike any weapon Earth had ever faced. She was part of a team racing against time to find a way to disable it before it reached Earth's atmosphere. In the command center, Haywood's fingers flew across the holographic interface, analyzing data that came in faster than she could process. The invader's ship was nearing the edge of the solar system, and there was little time left. The team had tried everything, every strategy, every plan, but nothing seemed capable of stopping the weapon in time. The targeting system is locked onto Earth's capital, Haywood muttered to herself. If we don't disable it, the damage will be unimaginable. Outside, in the skies above Earth, the final battle had begun. The Earth Defense Coalition's fleet, a ragtag but determined collection of military ships, surged toward the invaders' ship in one final offensive. It was clear this was no longer just a war for survival. It was a fight for the soul of humanity. If they failed, Earth would be nothing more than a forgotten dust in the universe. But if they succeeded, it would be a victory the galaxy would never forget. The alien fleet, now desperate and weakened, had begun to form a defensive line around their planet killer. They knew the weapon had to be protected at all costs. With every passing second, the Earth forces pushed harder, determined to find a way through the enemy defenses. Inside the command center, Haywood stared at the digital map of the enemy ship. It was surrounded by an impenetrable shield, powered by a core that protected it from all attacks. No conventional weapon could pierce the shield. Earth's forces were outgunned and outnumbered, but they still had one advantage: the element of surprise. "We don't have much time left," one of Haywood's colleagues said, his voice tight with anxiety. "If we don't find a way to shut down that weapon, it's over." "I have an idea," Haywood said suddenly. "But it's risky. It's a long shot, but it's all we've got." She turned toward her team, her face set with determination. "We'll infiltrate the ship's systems and use their own technology against them. We'll disable their shields from the inside." The plan was bold, perhaps too bold, but there was no room for hesitation. It was the only option left. Meanwhile, on Earth's front lines, the battle raged on. The Coalition's fleet had begun launching wave after wave of attacks, trying to breach the alien defenses. Their cannons fired relentlessly at the enemy ships, but the invaders' weapons were devastatingly efficient, destroying human vessels with frightening speed. But Earth's forces had a secret weapon of their own. The very same virus that had brought down the invaders' neural networks earlier in the war was being reactivated. This time, it was not just a virus to weaken their fleet. It was designed to infiltrate their planet killer weapon and take control of its systems. As the fleet engaged the enemy, Dr. Haywood's team worked frantically to upload the virus to the invaders' command hub. They had one shot, and they knew that failure meant total annihilation. Time was running out. "Virus uploaded," one of the technicians shouted, as the final code was sent into the heart of the enemy ship. The command center went silent as they watched the systems inside the invaders' ship flicker. A long breath of hope swept through the team as they saw the first signs of success. But then, everything went wrong. The invaders had anticipated this move. They had built in a failsafe, a backup defense system. The virus was fighting against a new wave of security protocols, and it was losing. "We're not out of the woods yet," Haywood said, her voice calm despite the panic that was beginning to surge in the room. "I'll need 5 more minutes. Just hold them off for 5 minutes." Outside, the battle seemed endless. Human soldiers fought bravely, but the invaders were relentless, determined to protect their weapon at all costs. 5 minutes. That was all they had. The fate of Earth hung in the balance. As Haywood fought to gain control of the invaders' ship, Earth's fleet gave everything it had. Human ingenuity and courage were on full display as they dodged enemy fire, launched daring counterattacks, and pushed forward in the face of certain destruction. They had no choice. Earth's last hope was to succeed or perish. And so, as the final moments approached, Earth's forces and Dr. Haywood's team would have to work together to defy the odds and change the fate of the galaxy forever. The enemy ship hovered ominously over Earth, its massive hull casting an intimidating shadow across the planet. Time had nearly run out. Dr. Clara Haywood's heart raced as she watched the last stages of the countdown. The invaders' ultimate weapon was ready, poised to destroy everything humanity had ever fought for. But there was still hope, if she could just buy them a little more time. The room fell into a tense silence as Haywood's fingers flew across the control panel, trying to keep the virus active inside the enemy's defense systems. Come on," she muttered under her breath, her voice barely audible. Outside, the Earth Defense Coalition's fleet clashed with the invaders' remaining forces, their ships locked in a vicious struggle for survival. The massive guns of the invaders' planet killer hummed with lethal power, and each shot was a reminder that they had only moments before humanity's fate was sealed. "We're running out of time," Captain Derek Riley, the commander of Earth's flagship, said over the comms, his voice filled with urgency. "We can't keep them off for much longer, Haywood. We need that weapon down now." Haywood's mind raced. She knew Riley was right. The enemy fleet was too powerful, their weapons too advanced. Earth's forces were being pushed to their breaking point. If she failed now, all would be lost. But if the virus could just finish its job, the shields would fall, and Earth's fleet would have a fighting chance. Her fingers hesitated for a moment as she looked at the final lines of code on her screen. The virus was barely holding on. She quickly initiated the final sequence, praying that the aliens' defense systems would buckle. Just as she hit enter, the entire command center was jolted by a powerful tremor. The planet killer ship had fired its first shot, directly at Earth's capital. The blast sent shockwaves through the atmosphere, and for a moment, Haywood thought she had failed. The beam tore through the sky, a terrible streak of white energy racing toward the planet. It was a moment of terror, one that could have been humanity's last. Then, just as the beam neared Earth, the impossible happened. The shield around the invader's weapon flickered, then sputtered out. The blast from the planet killer faltered. The energy beam wavered and scattered as the weapon's systems malfunctioned. "We did it," shouted one of the technicians in the command center as the status lights on Haywood's control panel began to change. "The shields are down. The virus has disabled them." Haywood felt a surge of relief wash over her, but there was no time to celebrate. Earth's fleet immediately launched everything they had. Every last missile, every laser cannon, every fighter craft. This was their one shot. "We're clear for impact," Captain Riley shouted over the comms. "Everyone, fire." The skies above Earth erupted in an explosion of light as missiles and laser beams raced toward the invaders' ship. In the heart of the enemy vessel, the invaders realized they had lost. Their weapon, their pride, was falling apart. Panic spread among the remaining forces, but the fight was far from over. The invaders retaliated with everything they had left, launching desperate counterattacks. But it was too late. The virus had already infiltrated their ship's core, causing widespread chaos. The invaders' leadership could only watch in horror as their most powerful weapon crumbled before their eyes. Captain Riley's voice came through the comms again, this time filled with relief. "We've done it. The invaders' ship is going down." But just as hope seemed to rise, a new, more terrifying threat emerged. Out of the depths of space, another massive fleet appeared on the edge of the solar system. They were different, their ships far more advanced and deadly than the previous invaders. They didn't engage directly, but their presence alone was enough to send a chill through the command center. "Who are they?" Haywood gasped, watching as the new fleet slowly moved into position. "They're here," a voice from the comms replied grimly. "The real enemy. The ones who've been pulling the strings all along." The final battle was far from over. The destruction of the invaders' planet killer had won Earth a temporary victory, but a darker and more formidable force was now on the horizon. This new enemy would prove to be humanity's greatest challenge yet, but for now, the hope of victory remained alive, burning brightly in the hearts of all who had fought for their survival. Humanity had proven that it would not bow to any invader, no matter the odds. Earth had won the first battle in the war for its survival, but the real fight had just begun. As Earth's fleet regrouped and prepared for the next challenge, one thing was clear: humanity was no longer a species to be underestimated. It had become a force to be reckoned with, and the universe would never look at Earth the same way again.